the question of decision making has been studied for decades, if not centuries. And it's a very interesting question because we rarely talk about it. We always talk about, well, we should have done this, we should have done that. We don't really think about thoroughly about how do we actually make decisions. This applies very much to companies. I think as investors, one of the key ingredients of success is how do companies make decisions. Nevertheless, if you listen to Wall Street and the mainstream media and typical fund management lingo, you rarely hear that. People talk about assets, people talk about things like competitive advantage, when in reality, the real competitive advantage is how people make decisions. I want to talk about this with the context of Chapter 8 and the Innovator's Dilemma and the question, how should you organize a company around disruptive innovation? This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's December 3rd, 2020. This is Krim Delco. For the day, the fund is up 15.8%. The market's up about 0.5%. For the year, we're up 325.5%. The market's up roughly 13.5%. We're outperforming by 312%. If you put $100 in Orange Capital Partners on January 1st, 2020, you would have roughly $425 now, and you would have $113.5 with the S&P 500 if you did the same. This is Krim Delco, and I want to talk about Chapter 8 and the Innovator's Dilemma and continue the conversation from yesterday, which was how should one organize around disruptive innovation. Christensen in Chapter 8 establishes sort of the ground state, which is disruptive innovation requires an organization around learning, an intuitive approach towards progress, versus sustaining innovation can be done through patterns, experience, through algorithms, sort of more process-driven, algorithmic, and less intuitive. Intuitive as defined as something that is coming from experience and knowledge and expertise, but not necessarily through the frontal cortex, not organized in a very algorithmic way. Today, I want to bring in the beginning of Infinity and David Deutsch's chapter on social choice and decision making. And this is very important. Bear with me a little bit. It might sound a little off the track here when I talk about social choice, the apportionment rule of Congress, and how decisions should be made at scale in societies, but it actually applies extremely directly to the question that we have, which is how should you organize yourself around disruptive innovation? How can fund managers spot the right companies that are at the cusp of becoming the next Apple or Amazon or Tesla? Because this is our business. It is our purpose to generate wealth by investing in disruptive innovation with large impact. In order to do that, we have to find ways to identify the right people and right companies. We have a principle stack, which is 4 books that we use as the base of our decision making. 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, the innovation stack by Jim McKelvey, the Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, and the Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch. And the Beginning of Infinity is kind of the base of the other 4 books. So I would say it's the principle stack principle. So the underlying principle of the principle stack. But anyway, let's not go there. My point here is that David Deutsch's book is giving us the epistemological, philosophical, and spiritual base on which we can build and invest money for customers and with large conviction, and hopefully follow our mission, which is to generate wealth by investing in disruptive technologies. Wealth defined as really freedom. So it is a moral imperative for us to succeed because we generate freedom for us and our customers. We are also part of building progress, which is another form of freedom, or an enabler of freedom, let's say it that way. So let's get back now to the question, okay, how can we identify the future generators of large wealth, or the present generators for future wealth? I'm sorry, this is the right way to phrase this. And the answer to those questions would be, we have to look for a company that is organized such that they can embrace disruptive innovation. And we also have to look at the competitive landscape, which fits into Clayton Christensen's competitive response argument that incumbents typically miss out on disruptive innovation because they don't have an incentive structure as such that they attack those markets or attack competitors which are opening up the vacuum under the incumbents markets with the new disruptive technology, which then grows and replaces those established markets and becomes the market. This is exactly what happened with Tesla in the electric car market. This is what's happening now partly with Twist Bioscience and some of our CRISPR stocks. I spoke about this yesterday on the German podcast. We believe that there is another massive disruption happening in biotech, and that is the AlphaFold solution of the protein folding project, which I think is unbelievably immense for CRISPR and genetics. And I'm going to talk about this in a special episode if you want to listen to the December 2nd episode of the German podcast, where I talk about the protein folding and how it is directly related to CRISPR and genetics, and how that, I think, will propel a new area of biotech and enormous value creation. Let's get back to decision making. So David Deutsch in his book talks about the inability to create social choice. There is mathematically, Kenneth Arrow has developed a no-go theorem about this. So you can prove mathematically that it is impossible to have an agglomeration of choices or social choice, a bunch of people sitting together and consistently having making choices that are in the interest of the whole group. That is impossible. So we always have to find compromise. And compromise, according to David Deutsch, is a bad thing. You don't want to have compromise. What you want, and this goes back to Popper, you want to have a system which corrects error, so which replaces existing decisions with better decisions. The question is not what is the best possible choice. The question is what is the process that allows us to continuously improve on our decisions. And that is the only solution we have. That's why democracy is the best we have right now, and we can improve on that. There's certainly details, algorithmic details, such as, for example, the electoral votes in the US and all that. Of course, you can improve on that, but fundamentally, you have to have a system in place that can better and better decisions, and you can never find the best possible system. There is no such thing. And according to Popper, he says in many times it's not just in epistemology, not just in knowledge, but in politics, in business, in any kind of organization where there is more than one human. What you need is not the question who should rule, who should decide, what is the right decision. What you should have is what is the process that improves on existing decisions. How can we get explanations and better explanations into the marketplace so they can replace not so good explanations? It doesn't mean that the existing status quo is always bad. It doesn't mean that we always have to change, but we have to have a system in place that can spot not so good decisions or spot problems and then improve. This is exactly what Jim McKelvey talks about in the innovation stack. And this is my arch now. This is my, I'm stepping now into the world of business and the world of fund management. Because here is the problem. You have a business which is trying to do something which has never been done before. This is part of the definition of a disruptive innovation. We have a business which is attacking a market that doesn't exist because it's disruptive. According to Clayton Christensen, by definition, it's disruptive, it doesn't exist, or it's so small that it's irrelevant. So you can't draw on expertise. You can't ask people, hey, how have you guys done this and that? It's impossible. Jim McKelvey has an answer to that. He says, let's build an innovation stack. Now, that's fine. And of course, he has a lot of street cred because he's built one with Jack Dorsey called Square, and he's really built it from scratch and done all these things that he talks about in his books, which is he's created new problems by solving existing problems, and then he's created even more problems and solved them, and so on and so forth. And he's not saying that in his book, but I would say David Deutsch would add to this, yeah, but you have to create better problems. You cannot create worse problems. and I've used the example of COVID-19. Of course, we can solve the COVID-19 problem by just killing everybody, and that way the virus will not spread. But that would be creating even a worse problem than the one we have before. So we have to find better solution, or create better problems. For example, we have a vaccine that creates new problems. How can we produce a vaccine at scale? How can we distribute the vaccine at scale? These are new problems that we have to solve, but they're better problems than the one before, which was people dying because of COVID. So let's get back to the question. So how can you have a decision-making process in place as a company? This is now a concrete question that I have as a fund manager to a CEO that is pitching me an investor deck. I want to do this. And my question to you is, okay, you have a new idea, you have a new technology. How are you going to organize yourself? Okay, for example, the CEO of Twist Bioscience will tell me, I want to do DNA storage. DNA storage, data storage on DNA. This is new. It doesn't exist. Nobody's doing this. How are you going to organize your company? Now, we can have some hints from Jim McKelvey, the innovation stack. We're going to solve one problem. Let's say I'm going to store the movie library of Netflix. Let's see what happens. Let's see how we can build from there. But of course, it's not enough. But we need more. We need more of a structure. We want to have more tangibility in how are you organized. And Christensen talks about organize yourself around learning. Have a process in place where people can continuously learn and replace existing decisions with better decisions. That's what Christensen calls intuition, because there is no algorithm. What he means with intuition is simply, it's something that we don't know for sure. It's not written down. It's not in a formula. It's something we have to grow with and learn by doing and use our intuition. So you have to have expertise. You can't just put a 5-year-old doing this. You have to have expertise. You have to have that human capability of creatively finding solutions to problems that we've never seen before. This is the key, finding solutions to problems we've never seen before. This is why a computer cannot run a disruptive, innovative company. Or to use Deutsch's words, or I think this was also said by Feynman, if I can't program it, I don't understand it. Can I program a company which does disruptive innovation? I cannot, because we don't quite understand how it works. But we have hints. We have hints such as you have to be organized intuitively. You have to learn with the process. You have to build the innovation stack. You have to be adaptive to new ideas. But how do you do that? How do you select good ideas from bad ideas? In the marketplace, in classical economics, in classical business theory, we say, well, you should follow the customer, follow the money. But you can't do that in disruptive innovations, because by definition, as Christensen has shown in the previous chapters, 5, 6, and 7, the problem is you follow your best customers, you get stranded. You have to build new customers. You have to do try and error. You have to build a customer here, a customer there. Let's get back to the Twist Bioscience example. Netflix is one customer. How about you try the FBI? How about you try markets that haven't even existed before, because there is no such thing as DNA storage. For example, SpaceX is going to use some of it when they fly to Mars to store data, because what are the attributes of DNA storage? It's sturdy. It can last for millions of years. It's very compact. But it's also very expensive, and we don't know how to do it at scale, and we're still not sure how to read and write and all that stuff, but we'll figure that out. So you need to find ways to organize a bunch of people around something that you don't know how it's going to evolve. And now we have this problem of social choice that tells us, well, there's no way to optimally organize social choice a priori. So how do we do it? And the answer is, you build goals, visions, you create poles, North Stars that you are working towards. You need to have a North Star, you need to have some compass. An organization such as Tesla or Twist or Square, whoever you are out there, that is building towards a disruptive, innovative innovation stack, has to have a North Star. You can, otherwise, it's too messy. If people don't have a North Star, and the North Star with Tesla is replace fossil fuels, period. Very simple. I can explain that to my mother. She gets that. It has to be that simple. It cannot be something along the lines of, I want to solve the quantum computing problem by using bosons versus supercooled ions and ion traps or supercooled conductors. And that's way too complicated. That's not a North Star. That is just another explanation on top of other explanations, and that most people don't understand, and therefore they're not very effective. I want to replace fossil fuels. I want to give access to as many people as possible with payments and financial services, particularly those that don't have access to the existing system. Period. That's the goal. Now let's go and solve that problem. That gentleman I mentioned yesterday, the name eludes me now. He's a Stanford neuroscientist. I think Andrew Huberman. He was on Lex Friedman. He said the one thing he likes about Neuralink is not necessarily the technology, even the approach. He has questions about that, but the fact that they created a certain problem that they're going after is something very unique. And this is the modus operandi of Elon Musk. This is what really puts him apart. And I will never forget when he was sitting about 6 years ago in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at the MIT Aeronautical Institute. He's giving a speech about SpaceX in front of people who are supposed to tell him how to go to space. This is the ground zero of US aeronautical knowledge, the MIT Aeronautical Institute, whatever it's called. And guess what? It is Elon Musk who sits down and tells them where it's going to go. I will never forget that moment, because it shows you the difference between academia, between knowledge in the academic context and knowledge in the business, disruptive innovation, wealth creation context. This is exactly the difference. And this is the line drawn between how you should organize a company, how you create wealth, and how you as a fund manager can participate in that. This is exactly where it starts. It is, what is the problem you're solving? How are you going to go after it? Is it simple enough? Is it big enough? It has to be big. You can solve the problem of making the best melted cheese sandwiches. That's a problem too. Maybe it's disruptive. It just doesn't have that large impact that we're looking for as investors. And no judgment here. It's just simply the way we operate. It's our mission. We have put large impact in our mission statement. It's not just accidental. It is it's actually deep. The large impact is important. DNA storage can have enormous impact on compute, on the way people live in the future. But most importantly, the connection between DNA, RNA, protein, and protein folding and function, which we think now is being closed with the development of AlphaFold and their solution to the protein folding problem, now that is big. No question. And if Twist is not the company, somebody else will capture it. We believe Twist is one of them. We hope that our CRISPR index can capture most of that value creation, but of course, that is not a foregone conclusion. So to summarize, in this chapter, in this episode, we're talking about chapter 8, the question, how should you organize around disruptive innovation when the problem is that you don't know what market you're going after and you don't know what to even look for because it's all new. We also spoke about David Deutsch's argument that there is no such thing as perfect social choice. So we then combined those two questions. We don't exactly have a mathematical algorithmic solution of how best to organize a bunch of people around the common goal. So how then should a company be managed that has a certain goal, which is to create wealth and to solve certain problems? And the answer is the company should have, amongst everything else, first and foremost, clear, simple goals or a vision. That's why this is so key, a vision. And then that vision is the North Star, so everybody in the company can intuitively start reacting towards day-to-day problems and keep solving problems and building that innovation stack that leads you towards that particular simple problem that you're trying to solve. In the case of Tesla, it's getting rid of fossil fuels. In the case of our CRISPR index, it is to offer better genetic solutions to diseases and agricultural problems and any kind of other life science and biological problems. Thank you.